Just in case I forget it at the end, I did bring some postcards about Peace in Schools, our educator training program. I know there's at least one person in the room that came tonight because she's interested in Peace in Schools. So if do make sure to check out some summer retreat opportunities or information about Peace in Schools if you wish. And I have a mailing list sign up there too. I'll be putting out a blog post soon, actually about Luminous, the experience of, I just am coming off retreat, personal retreat, and so I'm very, I've been feeling very enlivened by the luminous nature of awareness these days. So just about to put out a little something about that if that interests you. And I didn't think to bring a sign-up list for Peace in Schools, but if there are, I've already talked to several educators in the room, and I'm so grateful to know that there's such interest in what we're doing out in Portland. So if maybe you could just put a star by your name on that sign-up list if you're specifically interested in Peace in Schools, and then I'll make sure to get you some more information about that program if you'd like. So, I would love to begin this next section by inviting you to close the eyes again or turn the attention downward to a 45 just for another moment or so. Take an inventory, if you will. Let's take a gentle noting of what you're present to in this moment, present to having had an exchange with someone else or someone's during the break. Just pausing to notice, how did the break affect your experience of the evening? What's your direct experience of this moment? And just noticing, without judgment, what's different in this moment than before you came this evening? Just taking note. Thank you. And then if you just gently open your eyes, just popcorn style, I'd love to hear what you're present to, what you're noticing based on the meditation, and then based on how your break may or may not have been affected by the meditation. Anyone willing to share? Feeling more peaceful? Thank you. More open? Yeah, thank you. And just FYI, it's fine to say more resistant or more tired. There isn't a right answer, I promise. But I would like to just get a sense of what you're present to. Yeah. The tree outside is taller. Actually, you're getting shorter, sir. No, I know that feeling. The tree seems taller, things seem brighter, things seem wider, larger, more significant maybe. Thank you. Yeah. The whole break. Anybody else notice like, oh, that was a nice prompt, but yeah, no. My first teacher used to say that when we're practicing sitting meditation, that's the easiest place to be present to what's going on. And then walking meditation, gets a little harder because there's more stimulus. And then listening is harder because, then there's working meditation, doing, and then listening is a little harder because, you might be triggered by what someone's saying, or you might have something you want to say in response. And my first teacher used to say, the place that we're most likely to just completely leave is once we start talking. Yeah, thank you. All right. Yes, please. Being at home in your heart. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. It seems a little bit crazy that we don't just live our lives from that place, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Thank you. All right, so before we start this next section, one more time, please lower the gaze or close the eyes, whichever you're more comfortable with. This is going to be a mini guided imagery to prompt what we're going to be talking about next. And one of the reasons I wanted to do that this evening is it's my intention that the evening be based on your direct experience versus just my words. That's my favorite way to share practice, and just because I did hear that many people in the room are interested in peace in schools, in our semester-long credited mindfulness course, we always teach through experience first, and then we unpack the experience. So that allows teens to feel like they have the authority to be, their experience is the test of reality. So, in the name of that, I invite you, given that tonight we're talking about creating change with an open heart, how to be engaged with an open heart, I invite you to picture a time in your life in which you went about creating change or trying to create change from the place of knowing that you felt separate and other than. Perhaps even righteous. Perhaps caught in fear. Just picture some place that you felt inspired to create change, but you were doing it from a place of othering, separating, maybe fighting with. Because the eyes are gazing downwards or closed, hopefully that creates a sense of safety. Just raise your hand if you can't get in touch with any time in your life you've ever tried to create change from that place. And I'll keep talking about it. Okay, so we all know the experience of feeling separate. We're together in that. So now notice in that experience of trying to create change from experiencing yourself as other than, notice what's happening in the body. What's the conditioned mind doing? When you're caught trying to create change. Could be change in yourself. Consider a time, for example, that you believed you needed to be fixed or something about you needed to be fixed. And you went about trying to change that from a place of othering the part of you that you perceived needed to be fixed. So just notice what what's happening in the mind. What is the self-talk, or what is the voice of the conditioned mind going on and on about when you're in that place of othering, separation? What's happening energetically? If you were to describe in this moment with this imagery, if you were to describe how the energy is, how you're experiencing your own energy, how would you talk about that to yourself? Are there any emotions that you're present to? And now allow all that to go. Just let the whole image go. Just as you let it go, just noticing if there's any other information about that experience that might be being revealed. And now I'd like you to visualize a time in which you experienced creating change, or the impulse to create change, from a place that felt different than that. One in which, for example, you felt moved by love. And it's not a problem if this one feels hard to access. Do you feel able to remember an experience of feeling motivated to be part of some sort of change, yet that experience lacked any othering, separating device, feelings of, I need to fix this, I'm right, they're wrong. Just notice what there is to notice in this circumstance regarding what's happening in the body. What's happening in the mind. Are there any emotions that you're present to? What do you notice about the energy? When you're in this place that lacks that conditioned tendency to other a person or an experience or yourself in order to create change. Thank you. So if you would, I did mention this evening in the write-up, I mentioned that there'd be a short relational mindfulness exercise. So I'm just going to invite you for half a minute, just based on the time. I'm just going to invite you for half a minute to turn to the person next to you, and just I'm going to ask that the person with the shortest hair shares first, and I'll time it. And the other person's going to be the compassionate witness, the compassionate, open, allowing acceptance that just receives your partner's experience. And then I'll ring a bell, and that'll signify that you just switched. So just half a minute or so, just what you're present to, just and practicing being that allowing space for whatever your partner's experience is, and trying to stay with that if you're sharing. Okay? Switch, who's been doing the talking, please? All right, thanking your partner, or thanking yourself if you sat in silence during that 30 seconds. Oh, sure, if you can figure that out, you get an award. Thank you. Okay, we'll try it. Thank you so much. So what did you notice about that? Anyone willing to toss out an experience? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so you weren't expecting that would happen on the second one. But in both cases, you saw the emotional blueprint. You saw the impact the residue of it. Did that surprise you in general that there was that much residue? No. You knew that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, one of the things that, well, before I move into the theme more deeply, could you say a little bit about that experience of, what the blueprint was, what that was for this second one, where you weren't seeing yourself as other than? Uh-huh. Yeah. So when we're feeling other than, we know there's a system of control going on, right? We all know that place of, I'm feeling other than, so I need to control the other person, or I need to control me, right? Or is this just me? Am I revealing too much about myself? Okay, so, and then we know, but it sounds like part of the surprise for you is recognizing that there's still some fear in that place of not feeling other than, because there could be still a loss of control or loss in general, perhaps. Great. What I want to, a place that I'm going to invite you to bring attention to is, could it be the case that as we're resting in our shared being, so what I really wanted to talk about this evening is what it's like to move through the world from the recognition of our shared being, that is moving through the world from love and awareness of our shared being equating love, not the personal love, although the personal love is a reflection of that experience of our shared being. It's a refraction, if you will. So, is it possible that when we're moving from a place of resting in our shared being, that then the conditioned mind, the ego, comes in to say, wait, this is scary. You might lose control. This isn't an okay experience to be having. And usually what happens for us is emotion follows the thought. So the thought is, I might lose control. This isn't okay. The emotion follows it, and then the emotion leaves the blueprint. Is this resonating with your experience? Okay, good. Not good that you go through all that, because that is suffering, but good that you're aware of it, and good that you can name it now, because I want to suggest that part of what you're realizing tonight is that it's that second layer that in which the suffering occurs. And it's important not to confuse the experience of not seeing yourself as other than as an experience that is ridden with that emotional blueprint, because it's not inherently. Our conditioned mind brings that to the table, but it's not actually it's not what's most primary. So when we're resting in this recognition of our shared being, what tends to happen is there tends to be a lack of that residue, because we're recognizing ourselves as something that isn't that the residue or the emotions or the thoughts arises and passes through, but isn't affected by. That was kind of a mouthful, but does that feel, would anyone like that to be fleshed out a little bit more? Okay, great. Someone let me know if that, what I'm speaking about tonight regarding the conditioned mind that has a reaction to the heart being open, are we all on the same page with that, or would anyone like to flesh that out? How many people know that experience of like, okay, great, thank you. How many of you know that experience of the heart? No problem, you feel free to say a little something about what you're present to. That you're not feeling the separation. Well, great. I love that. That's ultimately what we're talking about here, is how to get in touch with that experience. When we're not feeling it, it's usually because we're not experiencing it. And that is, in fact, what we're talking about this evening, is being able to tap into the experience of not perceiving ourselves as other than. The moment we slide into perceiving ourselves as other than, that is the moment where fear has space to arise. Fear can exist. The moment we perceive ourselves as other than. In the recognition of our shared being, there's no room for fear. Fear might pass through, but we don't identify with it. Does that seem to resonate with your experience? Yeah, we don't when we're disidentified from the conditioned mind. The moment that we identify with the mind of conditioning, the mind of lack, deprivation, scarcity, other than, the moment we identify with that thinking mind, is the moment we create ourselves as, we perceive ourselves as other than. And in that, we lose touch with love. Love with the capital L, not the personal love. Again, the personal love is just a reflected light. Think of a prism. It's a reflected light on the wall. But that's not to be confused with the sun, the source. So notice how, in this moment, close your eyes one more time if you would, or gaze down at a 45-degree angle. Notice if in this moment it feels accessible to experience love with a capital L. Not the love that means you approve of your life experience, or you're doing things right, or your partner in the dyad share likes you a lot. More, if it's feeling hard to access, you might tap into it by recognizing the shared being of others in this room. The shared awareness in this room. And now just notice, picture yourself in a circumstance in which it feels harder to connect with shared being. Perhaps someone is yelling at you, or perhaps you're disagreeing with another person's politics. Thank you, and open your eyes. How was that for folks? Someone else willing to share what you noticed about going from being able to recognize shared being in this moment versus a situation where it might feel more difficult to tap into that? Yes. Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of sadness around our habituated ways of disconnecting. Because how many of you wake up in the morning and say, I hope I move through the day from a place of disconnect? I just really want to nail that experience of perceiving everyone around me as other than. I want to feel separate and isolated, and I just want to be right. You know? We don't have that intention, but it creeps up on us, doesn't it? We're deeply habituated to fall into that perception. So one of the things we're looking at with this meditation, just for the record, that meditation is really about collapsing what we're habituated to do in our lives, which is live in a subject-object relationship with life. So the attention always moving outward onto objects. As we practice allowing the attention to rest back, to sink into the heart, Ramana Maharshi used to talk about sinking the mind into the heart. He didn't, I don't think, mean the heart as an organ. He meant the heart of awareness. So just notice when that collapse happens, we feel more freed to experience directly the love that is always here. And love and awareness could be used interchangeably if we're talking about that vast awareness that I was pointing to in the meditation tonight. Infinite, open, vast awareness. Love with a capital L. Love is the recognition of our shared being. So the question becomes, when I allow myself to experience directly this love, this awareness, how do my actions in the world become on behalf of that direct experience? For most of us, or we could say most of the time, our actions are on behalf of that perception of separation. I feel separate, and therefore my actions are X, Y, and Z in the world, and they reflect that perception of separation. So we can't create change in the world in a way that's other than our conditioned habit of perpetuating a sense of other than-ness without addressing where our direct experience resides. Otherwise, we're just making topical changes, like trying to be less angry as I do my political action, trying not to be as mean as I fight the good fight. But things really shift when, through practice, we invite ourselves to rest in what's most authentic, and that's the place of non-separation. It's from there that our actions can be a reflection of that direct experience. But the resting in that experience, I was going to say place, but it's not a state, it's an experience. Resting in that experience has to come first. Yes?
Can the experience of knowing what it is to live, feeling like an other, also be a door into compassion and compassionate action? In that, because I know what that feels like, I want to stand with you so you know that you're not other.
Yes.
Especially in the experience of maybe someone wanting that person or really feel other. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. And just absolutely, yes, it makes perfect sense. It's a beautiful question. And just because of time, and I just want to honor the group's time, I will cut to the chase and suggest that, much like the share that was earlier this evening, the original impulse is actually a direct experience of the love we're talking about tonight. We get told, oh, we get told that we should question whether or not there was love there. But if you weren't able to recognize, oh, that person's experiencing being othered, can you feel, for example, when I reflect that back to you, how loving that is? If you didn't recognize your shared being with a person who's being marginalized, would you be motivated to be a voice for them? The question becomes, can that be the focus of your attention? To stay with that connection and that love and that empathy that arises naturally out of the recognition of your shared being. Versus, I recognize this shared being, I feel this empathy, now I need to be other than something else. It's actually possible for us to create great change in this world through staying completely grounded, firmly rooted in that experience of oneness, and still be have your love manifest in the world through creating change. Yeah, it's a deeply conditioned habit to think that we have to experience that perception of separation in order to create change. So thanks for offering that. Yeah. I would love to keep going, but I see that it is our time, and I just want to thank you all again so much for having me as a guest, and just remind you that if you'd like to check out any of the Peace in School stuff or talk to me afterwards, I'd be happy to do so. Thank you so much. Thank you.